Good evening. I'd like to call our meeting to order for July 24th, 2018. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Good evening. I'll have the clerk please call the roll.
Supervisor Fountain?
Here.
Treasurer Horning?
Here.
Clerk Chofiu here. Trustee Collier?
Here.
Trustee Germain?
Here.
Trustee Harper?
Here.
Trustee Petrucci? Here.
Thank you. Item number 4 is approval of our meeting agenda.
So moved. Support.
Motion by Trustee Harper, second by Trustee Germain.
I'd like to postpone 11A to the next meeting.
Good to do this.
It's not ready yet.
It's not ready.
We're not ready for that yet. So do you support that?
Yes.
Okay, and the second. Any other discussion? Being none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Item number 5 is call to the public. Anybody call to the public this evening? Being none, we'll move to item number 6, which is approval of our consent agenda.
Move. Support.
Motion by Trustee Petrucci, second by Trustee Harper. Is there any discussion? Being none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. And we have our presentation this evening. It's John Pfeffer for our fiscal year 2017-2018 audit. Good evening.
Thank you. Yeah. Well, I'd like to start out, first thing is, again, thank the Township Board for having our firm as your independent auditors. It's a real pleasure and to work on Hartland Township, and we really look forward to coming out here. The staff is great. The help we get from the manager, James, Susan, the clerk and treasurer, Kathy and Larry, is very important. What that does is it allows us to get the audit done timely and within budget. So, it's very important from the auditor's perspective, and we're definitely way ahead of time, as far as our time budget, as far as submitting it to the state. So that's all good. With that, too, statements. So again, what that indicates is that you're getting very accurate information during the year when you're trying to make important decisions. So I did want to mention that. Obviously, the audit report is very lengthy. I wanted to just mention the important parts of it. First of all is that we are issuing an unqualified opinion, which is the highest level of opinion that the independent auditor can issue. The importance of this is that it allows the township to go out for bonding and get, obviously good bonding rates. And most importantly, it allows you to continue receiving your state share revenues. And it's not really well known within the residents of many units that actually 50% of the general fund revenues come from state share revenues. The taxes and tax administration fees is a much smaller portion. So the importance of those state share revenues to the township going forward is really needed. With that, also I wanted to mention that as we do the audit, we also look at different aspects financially of the township. And the good news is that you were able to stay within budget, again, keep your costs down, and be able to add a small portion to your fund balance while at the same time making significant improvements to township parks, which is very important, obviously, to the residents. So again, this has really not just happened through this year, it's happened in prior years when you've been able to keep your costs down, add to your capital improvement fund out of the general fund, and then last year you made significant expenditures in that fund for the parks of the township. So, you should be commended for that. That's very important. Along with that also is the cash accounts of the township. So again, to Kathy's job that she's done, which has been great as far as investing the funds, there's over $16 million of cash that's being invested on behalf of the township. And, I have to say that from our perspective, we do like to see that if the returns are a little bit less, but the funds are protected, insured, collateralized is very important. And we really want the money, invested sort of like how you would handle grandma's money. So again, Kathy does a great job with that. So I did want to mention that, which is very important. Also in the utility funds, both sewer and water, you were able to, again, with costs, watching your costs on a cash basis for your operations, be able to add to your fund balance in those funds, which is very important because, at one point in time, the sewer with the economy and different things going on was going through tougher times. And with budgeting and managing the funds, you have different plans that you've developed to do that. And so that's been very good. So it's starting to, the labor is coming to fruition now when you're able to add to both of those fund balances. In the water fund, you had in cash from operations about $138,000, and then in the sewer was about $443,000. So those are all good signs from our perspective. We don't see really anything going in the wrong direction, which is important. And with that, I'll just open it up to the board if you would have any questions tonight.
Maybe we'll start with James or John, if you want to go through the slide presentation.
Yeah.
It's only a couple of slides, but just
We
kind of
covered
explain
some
to
of
the
it,
folks
yeah.
at home what we're talking about.
All right. And then, James, whatever you want to put in there. The first slide is the revenues of the general fund. And again, this points out that state shared revenues, when you compare that to the total revenues, is 50%. So again, if you look at the pie, property taxes, and you can add admin fees to it, are the portions, again, of the tax bill that comes to the township. As we all know, a significant portion of our taxes, go to the schools and other units. So then again, this really shows the breakdown of those funds. With that, we haven't really heard anything recently about the state share revenues changing, but at one time they were talking about reallocating them or some other things happening. So what's important is you've been able to maintain your general fund balance and add a little bit to it, which is important because, again, we don't know if that could change. If you then go to the next slide, is just a breakdown, again, in the general fund of all the expenditures. What this doesn't have in it, though, is this is just the general fund, not the capital improvement. And again, there was over $1 million of expenditures for township parks that occurred this year out of the capital improvement fund, which is very important, but this does not show that. And then if you could go on, James, to the next one. And again, this is the fund balance. So where we're at right now is, this is a little bit historic. It's March 31st. So again, we're at around the 2.425 number. And your expenditures without transfers run around $2 million. And then when you make transfers to the capital improvement fund, which allows you to make those improvements in the township, then you did add a little bit to the general fund this last year. But I would not say that this fund balance is excessive in any way, and that, again, moving every year transfers over the capital improvement is a good idea. What's that?
Time's up.
That sounds good.
Microsoft vetoed your.
Yeah, it's all right. Just in time.
Questions from the board?
Certainly, I'd just make a note, it is noteworthy that, we are able to continue to put funds in the capital improvements fund. That's important. We have goals for that in the budgeting process. And in fact, we adopted a budget this year that is less than last year's for reasons like that. We obviously invested quite a bit of that last year, and it's going to be a while for us to kind of build up funds again to do another round of projects. But we did kind of exceed our expectations by still having the fund balance that we do, even though we invested quite a bit last year. And that's a good thing, because even with the transfers we made out, we still had an operational surplus in the general fund that was higher than originally projected. So always happy to see that.
I'll move to accept the audit report from Pfeffer, Hannaford, and Pelka CPA for this fiscal year of 2017 and 18.
Support.
Motion by Treasurer Horning, second by Trustee Kalani. Is there any discussion? Being none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank
Thank you.
Next on our agenda is pending and new business. 8A is Hero Center carpet replacement. Mr. West, would that be your topic?
Yes.
Good evening.
Congratulations, Bob. You had a new
Thank you.
baby.
Thank you.
Wife did, right?
Well, I
Apologize.
think he's not sleeping, so I think he's involved.
Bear with me. What we have presented in the proposal before you this evening is a proposal for commercial carpet tiles to replace the existing floor within the Hero Center. Earlier this year, when we solicited quotations for this work, the prices were exceeding what was the budget allocation. We also experienced a scope change as well, where we were originally going to do half the building, and it was desired to have the complete building done, waiting until later in the year to see what sort of leftovers or surplus carpets were available. McNabb Carpet out of Milford, Michigan was able to provide us with, in their proposal, with carpet tiles that are commercial rated, and to completely recover the entire floor of the Hero Center at a cost less than what was allocated in the approved budget. So although this project has been delayed slightly, it has resulted in a better cost and a better product. If approved this evening, the carpet will be ordered, and the estimated delivery install will be within a 3-week window. So we still have time to get it installed before the start of the school year. Being that it is carpet tiles, it will minimize the impact on actually moving furniture, as the installers will actually clear out a portion of the room, lay the tiles, and once it's laid down, you can immediately put furniture back on it. So it will also eliminate having to pull a lot of the furniture out in the parking lot or anything of that nature. They can kind of shuffle it within the building. So that will eliminate any possible delays due to rain or anything like that, where we originally anticipated perhaps even having to bring some of the furniture outside for the day. So what you have before you is a proposal from McNabb Carpet, and Public Works is recommending the approval to get this project going.
Bob,
Yes.
are you going to have them supply you with a certain amount of excess so that, you know, like in a few years from now, if they have to be replaced, it's always sometimes difficult to match them properly, so if you have
Absolutely,
supply.
absolutely. And that was kind of the target with going with the carpet tiles instead of an actual carpet roll, was being that there's more frequent accidents, if you will, with associated with carpet, and just a high traffic use in that area. The desire to have carpet tiles was expressed to Public Works, so they could easily pull one up and replace one. So yes, we will be ordering, as part of this original package, it does include a 5% buffer of remaining tiles for us to keep.
So can these tiles be cleaned like normal carpet?
Yes, they are rubber backed, and it's a poly rubber blend, if you will, that's basically a backing for it, and they're glued in place, and basically you clean it and maintain it like you would any other carpet. A lot of businesses have gone to this type of material. Essentially, the only downside of it is, as it wears and the pattern, the actual carpet perimeter of the squares, the actual defined line starts to show over time, but it definitely makes maintenance much easier.
Did you look at other types of flooring material?
We did look at other types of flooring material, and unfortunately, many of the materials that we were originally desired were not commercial rated. That being said, the ones that were commercial rated, carpet was hands down the most economical choice between any of the tiles, be it vinyl, porcelain, or whatever else may be out there available. The tile provided with the subfloor that we have in the existing facility would have been very costly to install, not necessarily the material itself, but the subfloor would have cost a much greater amount than we have allocated. So Public Works is recommending this based on the best value for our dollar.
I have one more question. This might be a technicality, but I'd still like to ask. In the memorandum that Sandy prepared, dated July 18th, in paragraph 2, she indicates that all rooms at the teen center will receive new carpeting, with the exception of the storage room. The storage room, there's also a utility closet with a sink and so on. That's probably excluded. And specifically, I'm asking if the kitchen area is excluded, because we just had a gentleman put a new floor in there not long ago.
I apologize for that. You are correct. That is an inaccuracy. The only area, we will only be replacing existing carpeted areas. So anything that is existing tile will remain, with the exception of the storage closet.
And the storage closet doesn't, the kids don't even have access to that. It's locked.
The shelving is permanently mounted in there,
Right.
and installation costs, the installers indicated that there would be a premium for that particular room. Given the low traffic and the off-limits accessibility, we felt that that would be the best value. It can be done at a later date if desired, because we will have extra tiles. This particular tile has been around for some time, and they do project that it'll be available for many years in the future.
So I'm assuming that the quote you got excludes the kitchen and there's no reduction in price?
You are correct.
That's good. Like I said, it's probably just a technicality, so. I
Any
would
other
like to-
questions?
No, I was gonna
Okay.
move that we accept and award the bid as presented to D.E. McNabb Company, not to exceed $14,695, to replace the carpet in the Hero Center building.
Support?
Motion by trustee Jermaine, second by trustee Harper. Is there any other discussion? Being none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. Motion carries. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.
And item number 8B is the MTA Legal Defense Fund. Manager Whitman.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. You may recall that we actually participated with a number of other communities in funding an amicus brief when this was at the State Supreme Court. Our final cost in that, there were a number of more municipalities that jumped in. I think somewhere in the $500 to $700 range was our portion of that cost. While our side prevailed, so to speak, at the Supreme Court, the case isn't over, so to speak. They remanded it back, or they continued what the Court of Appeals said did need to go back to tribunal, and they needed to have a tribunal to address this dark store theory issue. A number of communities are participating in what the state of Escanaba has asked, making the proper argument to have a good case law for our benefit in the future is a very expensive undertaking, and they've already expended quite a bit, and so has a number of the taxing authorities for the city of Escanaba, the county, and the schools. And there's still a lot of expenses to undertake this argument at the tribunal. They're asking for, and you have a letter as well from Michigan Township Association endorsing contributions to that legal defense fund for that purpose. And I was talking with the admin committee about this. Based on rough math, the implications of this are easily, just for our millage, is upwards of $10,000 a year for the number of big box square footage that would be affected by this. And for the rest of our taxing authorities, would be tens of thousands of dollars a year. So that I thought that watching what other communities are contributing, a $2,000 contribution seemed appropriate in my mind. I think if it pleases the board, I think anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000 is what I'm recommending you to consider. There was a question, I'm not aware of any other Livingston County communities yet who have. I do know of at least one who does have this on their agenda in the next week to discuss contributing. And I should also note that the Michigan Department of Treasury is also contributing a large amount of funds for this as well to help with the cost of the case. So just my recommendation, and it's within budgeted amounts already in our legal costs. We can afford to do it.
So for the public, can you explain the whole theory a little bit so that when questioned why we would make this expenditure, I mean, we kind of have an idea because I think some of us have all gone online to understand what our theory is, but I think the public should really have an idea of what you're talking about. I also think that these questions of law are issues that are that really should be addressed by our legislature. I noticed in the memorandum that this is something that our legislature continues to fail to act on, largely because at this time in our history, the Michigan Association of the Chamber of Commerce is pretty well entrenched in our state government. And so in terms of lobbying to ensure business interests are protected and taxes are the way in which we assess property is something that they're very interested in. So I assume the Michigan Chamber of Commerce is also a litigant in this endeavor, correct?
I do believe they filed an amicus brief for sure, and they're definitely supporting, and they were very much against. There have been a number of bills that introduced to address this issue. One actually made it out of the House a couple of years ago. They lobbied hard against it. They found favor in the Senate, and it's the committee chair for that Senate Finance Committee is sitting on it. It's going nowhere.
So one of the thoughts is if we feel strongly about this as a board, there's a couple ways. One is whatever goes on at the Supreme Court or the Court of Appeals, tax tribunal, however the decision, so ultimately it falls on the state legislature. We could spend this, they could win or they could lose, but at some point in time it could result in a change in the legislation. Why aren't we proceeding with more of a campaign to express our voices in terms of a policy change at the state legislature, like in the form of a resolution, if that's something we might want to consider? Certainly, I think Mr. Hune is aware of what's going on. He's been up there long enough in the state legislature to probably understand this issue fairly well. And I'm just surprised, why wouldn't we want him to come talk to us, address this issue in particular, and why he wouldn't be a champion of local government to look at this issue? Just a question.
It's certainly a valid question, and it would be absolutely appropriate for this board to extend those conversations, to pass resolutions, to do those types of things. I don't think there's any shortage of him hearing that mess. I've personally talked to him about this issue a number of times over the year, particularly my disappointment that a committee would sit on a bill that has passed the House that would fix this problem rather than cause us to chase our tail. It's a very it's a head scratcher, because I don't think the Michigan Chamber of Commerce represents the same interests as our local Chamber of Commerce, because this is very much a big retail versus small business owner issue. It's absolutely an unfair loophole, so to speak, that benefits the big corporations versus the small local business owner, and the ability to get taxation rates at pennies on the dollar per square foot that any of our other local business owners would pay taxes on. So I think that message has been heard, and there's no question that Michigan Township Association, Michigan Association of Counties, Michigan Municipal League, the Michigan Association of School Boards, all of those are.
And the Treasurers Association.
Yeah, and the Department of Treasury even is spending state dollars to try to fight this issue.
This is really a disappointing kind of outcome. I mean, I'm a litigator, I'm a lawyer, and I deal with municipal issues, so this kind of thing is just, what bothers me is it's spending taxpayer dollars in order to collect taxpayer dollars. It just seems to me the wrong way to go about solving this problem. And I haven't decided how I'm going to vote today on this if it comes up, but I just think that this is too important of an issue that should be dealt more by our representatives in our republic here in the state. And if they're not going to address it, then they need to be called out, and everyone needs to call them out. We send them up there to do a job. They get paid full-time wages. Some of them actually have jobs on the side, and they don't get the job done. And more and more I hear about it, I'm tired of it. I'm tired of the kind of people we elect in our state legislature. They don't want to address the hard issues. And this is one of those issues that should be addressed, one way or another, and it shouldn't be, we are destroying small businesses in this country. Another thing that's problematic on this, and you brought it up, is a lot of these same large corporations like Home Depot have sued to locate themselves in communities because communities did not want to destroy their local businesses. They sued to get into their communities, to be allowed to have the land use, and those same corporations are also now suing not to pay their fair share based on evaluations to try and find tax loopholes. This is wrong, and we need to deal with it. I don't think the lawsuit is the way to go about it, though. It's my 2 cents.
Well, I'm really struggling with this as well, and we talked about it in our admin meeting. And if there's a lot of different information on here on dark store theory, and I'm just trying to pull up the one I had earlier. It's about a half hour. Maybe you've watched it.
Yes, I've seen that one.
And the actual chief judge for the tax tribunal, Stephen Lasher, says that local units can't afford the legal fee and the big boxes can, so that's why. So what kind of, and I don't know enough about this to really, I'm not an expert. I find this very, very frustrating that companies that have the big lawyers can come in, and then the local units like us are left to
What do you
whatever
mean?
they decide from a legal perspective.
But that's exactly the reason why I think we should contribute the $2,000 to fight it as a unified group of
But
people. It's
okay.
already in court.
So here's and again, I will probably
Right, lawyers.
misspeak at this point, but if the tax tribunal is supposed to be following some type of protocol, there shouldn't even be an issue. I mean, what's there to argue, right? It's the valuation. What are the three-legged stool, James, on this when it comes to
You
valuation?
can do it by sales approach, cost approach, or by income approach.
Right.
The 3 main valuation methods.
Well, those are the 3
So-
typical ones, but when it comes
There's-
to evaluation,
So why would they all of a sudden be looking at a big box store differently because they have a legal team that can
That's why.
twist the story? I mean, it doesn't seem to be that difficult, but here we are, we're fighting each other over, so if it's not coming out of the Senate, why isn't it coming out of the Senate? What's their end game? Why don't they want to make a decision? That's what I want to hear and understand. It's important to everybody. So it's important to every community.
I think if you were, you'd have to probably go to the Michigan Chamber of Commerce, their talking points on there, why it's the big green monster.
Well, look, if they're approving it at the tax tribunal, approving these discounted assessments, then why are the rest of us being overassessed? What's the rest of the story? Or is it just for the lack of, because if you have the big dollars and you can sue somebody that you're going to be able to win it? That doesn't sound like good law to me, or good policy.
It's a fair question. I think the dictates that the tribunal has are broad enough that they have pretty broad discretion to interpret the ways that they can get to an evaluation. And so because they have so much discretion, not every case, not every dark store, big box case that has come before the tribunal has successfully lowered the rates to these crazy low per square foot numbers. Enough of them have, and so that just kind of feeds into it, depending on the tribunal judge you get, that if you can spend enough resources and throw enough numbers at it, that they start to think, oh, okay, I suppose that's a valid way to get to evaluation, and therefore it's artificially lower than any other business in the community. yes, in theory, that very much could be a matter of if every business in the community had the resources to go make the same argument in front of the same tribunal judge, would they get all their valuations lowered similarly? I suppose it's possible. It's very shuddering to think about. I don't, and you wouldn't be, certainly this isn't, a hill I'm dying on, and for all that we discussed in the admin committee, and I agree, the frustration is properly focused at Lansing. And we can continue to say that and watch this case lose to our detriment and continue to shake our finger at Lansing, or we could, try to fight the fight in the case and continue to fight the fight in Lansing. If the board is not inclined to make a contribution, I would certainly suggest at the very least we look at maybe a resolution or some more active. Of course, our senator is a lame duck, and we've got a new senator coming in the fall, and that would be probably where discussion needs to take place. I would, but I don't want to assume that you're going to have a number of new House members too. I don't want to presume another bill will pass through the new House as easily either.
I'd have to agree with Joe that I think it's a legislation issue, but it's not getting done. The fight right now is at the tax tribunal, and I think I would be supportive of kicking in a couple $1,000s to fight the fight where it's at right now. It shouldn't be there, but that's where it's at, and I think I would support contributing to that cause.
I would support it, subject to this board. I think this board needs to speak unified, and I'd like to hear what the board says. I think we need to have a resolution. I don't care if it's, I think we ought to have a resolution supporting whatever the legislation that was formally adopted by the House and is pending in the Senate, and directed to our, with a cover letter explaining why this is important. So I would support the litigation.
Me too, both.
But subject to us. But I think we need to talk, speak. I haven't heard from everybody on the board and where they are on this. This is an issue. It deals with, business and businesses in our community. I mean, we have 3 big box stores in our community, large box stores.
But isn't it also, don't we try to get equitable from business to business? Shouldn't there be some standard procedure, how they,
Big or little.
And I want to clarify the issue. We have 3 traditional big boxes, but we have a couple of other that are similar, large footprint stores. But actually, the slippery slope of this is they argue functional obsolescence, which this same argument applies to any sort of single-use building, a pharmacy, a fast food restaurant, anything else that could be arguably functionally obsolete for only that one purpose and user it was built for, and if it were ever sold with deed restrictions later, would sell for, much less than what it cost to build it, because that value has been artificially depressed by its singular construction and the deed restrictions. I can certainly prepare a resolution and look at what others have done.
That's where I'd like to go at this point, and I would like to invite Dr. Bob Pell and Joe Hune to be at our next meeting, and I would like to hear their reasoning for action on one level and inaction on the other, and the implications it means, not just to Hartland, but why are they letting this go to a entity that what are they hiding? What's the issue? I'd like to know. I think it would say a lot if I don't think we've ever invited them to come here to give us an opinion, and this is an important issue.
I agree with Bill that we should invite him, but I believe what Joe says about doing a resolution, but I also believe what Larry said, we got to go where the fight is, and the fight is right now, in this litigation, and I'd be all in favor of doing those other 2 parts, but right now, contributing the $2,000 and continue the fight with our legislators in passing this resolution.
This is the way I want to be treated equally. I've got my business hat on right now, too. I want to be treated equally. However whatever the parameters are, there shouldn't be one group of business people that get treated differently. So before I would commit to putting dollars into it, are we overtaxing our businesses? Is that why the state's not willing to, or the legislatures are looking to take a deep dive into this? Do they care?
Because it's election year.
Do they not care if what happens at the local level? These are the questions that we should ask them. Right?
Right.
Because there's a reason that they're there now is because they've won. So somebody at the tax tribunal has stated in certain cases that they are being overtaxed. Am I wrong, James, to make that statement?
Yeah, certainly, you're asking types of questions that probably the side on the favor of the big boxes would be asking. And that if you were to take the arguments to the nth degree, it is somewhat implied in those arguments that I suppose all are that everybody's property assessment should be based on the idea that it was only built for that purpose and it can only be sold for so much, and it would.
Yeah, I don't think, I mean, the whole idea is that why the appraising situation, how you appraise, as James has indicated, there are the three general methodologies for improving. There's a reason why we don't value an apartment building based on what it would cost to replace that apartment building new, right? And we look at sometimes sales data, but in reality, the value is really in the investment. People buy an apartment building to lease out as a business, and it comes in the form of the income derived. So in some cases, certain uses really governs the value of what that property's worth. My house is what it's worth to me and what I can sell it for is most likely what you can sell on the market. But if I were to sell, I had an apartment building, and I mentioned this to you earlier, Bill, if I was making $50,000 a year on an apartment building and I decided to sell it for $10 million, I'm not going to get $10 million for it. Because that investor who's going to buy it for an apartment building is going to look at what I make per year and what is it going to take in order to meet that delta for paying off what I have to pay to acquire that asset. And if I have to, and still make a profit at some point. So you look at income. Income is because you're buying a business in addition to the apartment building. These big box stores, they have ability to be repurposed in the future. But they're really based on, in a lot of ways, they should be based on the square footage and what it would cost to build that, in my opinion. I don't think they use an income approach on them because they're all.
If you go to tribunal and you get appraisal, you're going to look at income approach.
That's a good idea.
Our appraiser is asking for that, and that's a lot of times that ends the conversation. They settle then.
Yeah, because as soon as they.
The appraiser comes and says, all right, open your books. And we very much use the income. And I think when you look at this, when you're trying to reconcile, a big box store that costs $10 million to build, all infrastructure included, versus it selling for less than $4 million because of its deed restrictions and functional obsolescence. You're trying to reconcile that. Well, if it's a brand new building or a recently new building, and I think you all know who I'm thinking of, there was a reason they were willing to spend $10 million to build that thing. It was worth that much to them to do it, based on their projection and pro forma of what kind of income would be generated by it. And that is how we approach value. A hybrid of all those things, what it would cost to build that, but it's based on the income approach that they value what it's worth. Otherwise, why would they spend $10 million that they want to argue is worth less than $4 million later? Because it's worth $10 million to them. And that is, I suppose, the inherent struggle of what the proper valuation for taxing purposes is.
I'm curious to hear what what Joe might have to say, because a lot of these folks, when they want to refi these commercial properties, they bring in a number of things they have to bring in, including appraisals and income. Right? I mean, that's part of the deal. And I'd be curious, you know, if they're going to leverage that asset, they probably want the highest amount of value in order to leverage it.
It's rare, but it has been known to happen. People come in and argue that their valuation's too low because their bank is saying, township says it's only worth this. Doesn't happen often.
Any other comments? Joe, you do have comments?
Pardon me?
Do you have comments?
Oh, yeah, you can look at income, but you have to do an analysis on how the income was arrived, so it just isn't the only component you look at when you're making an investment.
But it seems like in this case, the rules should be defined well enough, so we shouldn't have to be worried about this even happening. That's, maybe I'm making it too simple. I don't know.
I happen to agree with a lot of what you said.
So we've talked about two different things. One's inviting our local legislators. The other one was to,
I think it's all.
so however you guys want to go.
I think it's all.
We were going to prepare a resolution
Right.
from our board too, right?
But
Well,
I'd like
I'd like-
two different motions
Yeah.
on the floor.
oh, I was going to do them together.
Go ahead.
Move to approve the contribution of $2,000 to the MTA Legal Defense Fund and create a township board resolution that will be passed on to the legislators supporting the House bill.
Support.
Okay, I would like it to be two separate motions. I would like it not to be the same motion. I'd like to separate the legislation element from the money element.
Well, the other one needs to be a consensus anyway. Move to approve contribution to $2,000 to the MTA Legal Defense Fund.
Support.
You support that? Any other discussion?
I just had one, I'm in favor of, by the way, but I had one question for James. It was not clear to me what the Supreme Court said and where the case currently is and why they need more funding. Can you explain that for me and the public?
So the short version would be that the city of Escanaba was pressing back against this dark store theory that Menards was trying to argue and wanted to basically fully make those arguments in front of the tribunal. Menards appealed that basically to the Court of Appeals, and the Court of Appeals said Escanaba prevailed. They said, yes, Escanaba should be able to present evidence and make the argument against the dark store theory. And Menards appealed that decision to the state Supreme Court, and the state Supreme Court upheld the decision, again, in favor of Escanaba, saying that Escanaba should be able to argue against the dark store theory in tribunal. So the win at the state Supreme Court just sends them back to tribunal to make the argument, which is to be done right and to be done well, is an expensive argument to make, to bring experts in and to, and that's what this cost is about.
And how long has this been going on so far? Because they're already up almost $200,000 in legal fees.
Yeah, I can't remember. It's been a few years. Yeah.
Okay, no further questions.
So the motion on the floor is to allocate the $2,000. Is that correct?
Yes.
Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay? Nay.
Nay.
Passes. And then the other motion would be to invite our legislators via a resolution and invite them to our next meeting. Is that what we kind of talked about?
I think that's two things, but
Yeah, I
we're
think
going to
one
do the
is
resolutions no matter what.
Okay.
But we don't need a motion, we just have James create one.
Right, but it
It's
is
consensus.
but no,
wanna
it's
make
a
a motion?
resolution, you adopt a
No,
resolution.
no, I'm saying a consensus to have to create it. We don't,
No, we don't, you're
We
right,
don't-
that,
we don't
that
need a
you're
motion.
you're
So
right.
there's a consensus to have James
Direction.
create a resolution? And then we'll bring that at our next meeting?
'Cause
And
that will
then
need
the
to be
other
made
thing would be
Right.
to, I'll personally extend an invitation to them, and we'll do it in writing as well. James and I can work on that tomorrow, and we'll get that for our next meeting.
Would it behoove us to also invite the county commissioner representing our district? Because maybe this is an issue that the county could take up as well. It's got implications for them.
I would think so. Is that,
we have two of them,
is that fair? We have two, we'd have two different
reps.
representatives.
Don't know if they'll come. I think they should be invited.
Yes.
I wouldn't waste your time.
No.
Sorry.
Well,
We will draft.
Did I say that out loud?
We will draft that and
You know.
then we'll have consensus from the board.
On camera. I'm proud of it, too.
All righty. Anything else on this topic tonight? Being none, we'll go to our second meeting in July for board reports. Unless I'm missing something, better check. Nope, board reports. We start with Treasurer Horning.
This weekend's a big weekend at the farmer's market. We're going to have rock painting with the kids all day long, so it'll be a lot of fun.
Thank
You
you.
gonna send them down to Ann Arbor? That rock there, have them paint that? Just kidding.
Trustee Kalani,
I have nothing to read.
Trustee Jermaine.
A couple of things. Several meetings ago, we discussed about a grant award from Michigan Farm Bureau to construct a hoop house at the southwest corner of the Hero Building. I've had good meetings so far with both the Hartland Township Planning Department and the DPW Department. We pretty much have decided the best location for the building for construction and economic benefits. And the approval at the township level can be handled internally administratively. The holdup or the unexpected, I guess, component of this is that the county building department is looking for a more robust building than we had originally estimated when we were putting together the grant application, meaning that they want something that can withstand greater wind loads and snow loads and has engineering calculations to support those things. So we're at a decision now whether we're going to try to create that information or just purchase a more expensive unit where the manufacturer already has that information available. So the question that I have for the rest of the board is whether you would consider assisting in the construction or the cost of installation. I'm currently seeking funds from many of the area businesses to try to, make up that difference in shortfall right now. It's a decision that, we have to have the money spent by the end of the year. And, we all know the construction season in Michigan usually ends by early November. So, and we still have to get through the county building department. So this is something that really has to happen in the next couple of weeks if we're going to move forward. I haven't had a chance to talk to the Hero Board. I know they've got some surplus funds. Maybe they can help make up that shortfall and, build up the reserve with additional fundraisers or something like that. Or I think this is an opportunity we don't want to miss. If we're only a couple $1,000s short, there should be some way to make that up. So I just wanted to throw that out, and obviously we don't have to make a decision tonight, but it's something that
Can you have that for us at our next meeting?
I could, something to think.
Okay.
Yeah, I should have a lot more detailed numbers by then as well.
Man, I'm confused. Are you talking about the shortfall between upgrading the building or paying for the specification of what you already proposed?
Upgrading the building. I think from my point of view, it would be better to get a more robust building because this is not this is something that should last 25 years if it's, and if we go with a more of a backyard type residential structure, people might lose interest, but I think in this location, it's got a heater inside. It's made for, you could start a business out there and, run a greenhouse really. So I think getting the little higher quality material would be a good thing in the long run, rather than just trying to throw some numbers together to get it through so that's where I'm kind of leaning. Okay, and then I have two more items quickly. I have a question for our DPW director since he stayed. I'm curious, do we have a map of all the street lights that the township is responsible for?
We don't have a digital one.
It's not digital? So, and what is the process to get street lights fixed that have been out for years?
Depends if they're public or private, but it's something that we could look into.
Okay, so the procedure is to notify?
Public Works Department.
Okay, all right. I have a list for you. And then the next thing, and perhaps you should move a little closer to the mic this time. The next thing is that I've had at least a half a dozen residents contact me because of, they realize I'm an engineer, asking about why repairs need to be made to Hacker Road, where the curb is falling off. So can you just, I know the answer, but I thought it'd be better to come from you.
Sure, absolutely. Director Crane of the Livingston County Road Commission has acknowledged that there was essentially a drainage issue or a stream washing away part of the embankment along that road project. They have agreed to fix it. It is, they're not looking for additional funding from either of the partners from the original construction project, but essentially what they are going to do is excavate the entire cross section of the road, and they are going to use a styrofoam type block to eliminate some weight and rebuild the foundation around that particular stream crossing. In a nutshell, that's what they're doing there, and it is an extensive repair. It is there is some depth involved, more so than what is normally at a culvert crossing or anything those similar nature, where that can usually be repaired in 2 to 3 days. So that is the extensive nature of this particular incident, without diving into the engineering details.
I had my own conversation with the road commission director, and you summarized what he took 20 minutes to tell me very well. So thank you.
You're welcome, absolutely.
And then the last thing, Mr. Supervisor, and I do not need an answer right now, but I wanted to request that Manager Wickman, if he's not going to bring it up in his manager's report, to talk a little bit more about the Spark event coming for our Clyde Road properties and what properties might be involved, whether there's any action that our board should take or be aware of. You can either answer it now or wait. That's your choice.
Yeah, I can do it quickly now. What we were doing is we were putting together a website and with Spark's assistance to highlight the properties around the Clyde Road interchange that were designated on our future land use map for future planned industrial research development, light industrial uses. And so we put together the baseline information of kind of background where the infrastructure is, things that might be of interest to a potential investor or developer. The part of the process we've been working on most recently was to reach out to all the property owners who are on that future land use map who would be on that website map. First of all, to ask whether they want their property to be included in that promotional piece, and to also see if they were interested in having the contact information for potential buyers or developers, investors. And we gave them a deadline. That deadline just passed. We did hear from all the property owners around that interchange, and so we're updating the website to include the contact information for those who wanted to, and then we're going to publicize the website as to promote that interchange as an area. A brief offshoot of that is that, of course, we know the southwest corner was developing under new development. They've got an approved site plan for a light industrial building, and their intention is to move forward. Most recently, they've been talking with the county about connecting to the sewer system there, and hope to kind of get that wrapped up soon because they want to get that building built with the materials that are there. They have indicated that they have had quite a bit of interest in developing other buildings on that property. There's a number of acres there, and they could put more light industrial uses there, which you have approved the rezoning for. And that could ultimately lead to more areas of that interchange being of interest for that type of use. So does that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
All set, Matt?
Yes.
Okay. Trustee Harper?
No report.
Trustee Petrucci?
Yes, I'd like to take a minute to congratulate Adam Carroll